Okay, so I need to finish up these pieces here on the Abo series. Now, I'm kind of afraid to work this one, so I'm going to work this one first. This one's already getting pretty thin. I think it's 6-to-1 ratio in that last video. So I'm gonna wait on this one and then try working this piece. Okay, so when it gets down to this point, I got to be very careful, obviously, but it depends on what type of point I want to make. Some points are pretty thick, so those are much simpler and much less risky than the thinner ones. So I'm just knocking off the sharp edges, thinking about what I'm going to do. It's a sandstone. I'm also trying to remember what I was discussing last time. And it was mainly flattening one side. I think I might do that on this too. But right now, if I was zoomed in, you could see the edges are kind of thin. So I've got to beef up the edges if I want to work running long thinning flakes. Not too beefy because then the antler won't grip. It'll just slip off. And the hammerstones also will bounce off if it's too thick. But not because it won't grab, it's because it's too strong and it won't break the tensile strength. It'll just bounce off. Okay, so I'm going to experiment with the antler a little bit. I think I mentioned that this was a little bit harder than I anticipated, even though it is heat treated. Okay, so I usually don't work them with hammerstones at this stage because when I hit, it's hard to support. If I do a crisp hit, it usually works pretty good. I'm going to try one hammerstone strike and see how that works. Just a swiping motion. Okay, that was a very... oh, there he goes. For a second there, I thought it didn't detach. It didn't run nearly as well as I wanted to, but did respond pretty good. So I'm going to try another one. I'll try another thinning flake. It's not really thinning if it doesn't go halfway or more. And I don't think this will either. There's a step fracture that'll slow it down. It's stepped the other way. It's not stepped this way, so it won't stop it. But when you run it toward a step fracture, it just kind of, once it reaches it, all the pressure is gone and it just doesn't dig down in or continue to dig down in. It just stops pretty much the flake there. But it's not a hard stop like I was going to hit right into the step. This is on the back side. Okay. Okay, so technically that did run halfway because part of it came up to here. It kind of fanned out. Not too bad. But now there's a big step here on this side. So I've got to try to hit from the back side again. And again, I have to make sure I have convexity, because if the side of a platform is concave, if it's scooped out a little bit on the other side of the platform, that flake's not going to travel very far. So it's got to be concave. Oh, that was an undetached flake or something. Yeah, I thought it stepped right there, but it didn't. It just undetached. So that was pretty good, actually. Pretty large area. I can still take one flake in there. Nice. It's responding pretty good to hammerstone. And it's been such a long time where I've slept several times before, after that last video, so I don't remember what I reduced this with. Billet probably. But the hammerstone seems to be working pretty good. So let's see, I'm going to try a few more with the hammerstone. Really nice. Now that one I think I hit twice, right? Once just barely nicked it, and then the second time I hit really high, higher than I thought I needed to. Got kind of lucky, I think. Nice thinning flake. That one is a thinning flake because I went past halfway. Now I'm wondering, the engineer side of me is saying, what's the percentage of that from the total percentage, or the total face area? What's the percentage area of that? I think it's like 30%, just, or 40%. Just looking at it, that's about the maximum you can get from a flake, is a 30% or so. I think, I don't know. Flake removal. So that was excellent. Okay, so let's see. Now this one's going to have to be pretty precise, because there's a steppy area or scooped out area there that's going to stop the flake. So I got to hit exactly right to remove this bump here, this lumpy mass right here. Indirect percussion is great for this, so I'm going to switch. And hope you can hear me. I try to get the microphone close. Yeah, really nice. But there's still a bit of a step right here. But I won't talk too much about those because you can probably just barely see that, so it's not really good to talk about it when you can't see it. It's not very productive if you can't actually see what I'm talking about. But I got it from the backside. Most of that mass anyway. I didn't take out that step exactly because it kind of went a little bit that way instead of fanning out. Instead of the flake fanning out, it only fanned out this way and didn't take out the step that way. I'm not sure exactly why it does that. Probably because it wants to annoy me. Okay. Well, this side now is pretty flat. So it's just a matter of turning the edge and flattening the other side. So let me do that now. Seems easy, but you can mess up the edge by turning it. If you're not careful, you'll create a lot of little step fractures. You have to make sure you don't create step fractures at any point. And I'm hitting at a very, I don't know. I can't remember if it's a low angle or a high angle. But I'm just grazing it, just barely swiping. Hardly any inward force. It's mainly just a, I don't know, glancing blow to remove short flakes. And yes, there is a time where you remove short flakes on purpose. And turning the edge or beveling the edge is one time that you purposely remove short flakes. I don't know if you can see those dropping, but they're just little teeny, very bulky flakes. I said bulky, but I think I meant thick, short, thick flakes, just beveling the edge, and I can finish up with the hammerstone. Now on real artifacts, a lot of the preforms that I see, this process of turning the edge and striking off these weak spots is not common. A lot of times these preforms have very erratic edges, and I'm not sure why. I mean, it could be that the napper said, well, it's not a very good size or whatever, and discarded it before actually going through the trouble of trimming everything up, or it just wasn't necessary. Once you get good enough, it might not be necessary to do all this trimming and brushing the edge and making sure everything looks kind of straight. I guess the more experience you have, the lazier you get. I don't know. You might not need to dress up the edge as much. But I'm going to just to reduce the risk of producing bad flakes on this next thinning pass. Now, by thinning pass, I mean, running flakes on this side. I don't really mean, running in flakes in sequence, because I think I've used the term pass before to mean a sequential flake removal. And it's not necessarily sequential when you do a pass. You can, take random flakes wherever. So the center line is not exact. This side here is below center for most of this edge, but this one is not. This is like right at center or slightly above center, but I'm still going to try removing flakes. Especially near the tip, you don't need to drive really long flakes, so it doesn't really matter too much near the tip if you're exactly below center. Because you're not running really long flakes, and sometimes some guys and some artifacts have thick tips where only the very end is thinned, and it's kind of beefy just beyond or behind the tip. It's beefy here, and just the very tip is thinned down. I see that on Clovis and some other types. Okay. Alright, so my main goal is to get this as thin as possible. That way I can make just about anything I want from it. And I'll just thin it down and do the width to thickness ratio. And then I may continue it to the final stage where I actually make a point, some point style out of it. Okay, so I'm taking flakes off of the most, or the strongest platforms first on this side to see how they work. I'm hitting really hard, and it's probably too hard because I got a little step fracture and some weird things going on. Okay, so probably need to do some pressure on the tip instead of trying to drive flakes with the indirect. So I'll just move down. This platform seems to be pretty good for a hammerstone strike, so I think I'll try that. Now, I got a step fracture, so that was a really good platform, but I didn't hit it right, and I got a step. So, to reduce the chance of not hitting right, I should just stick with the indirect. Okay, so I just got another step right next to it. Because even though everything was set up just right, and with copper I could have blown through there, with antler there's a lot of shock absorption, and it just really doesn't power through a lot of things, so you've got to have a very good surface to work with if you want the best results. But I'm going to try again with another strike, and if I can't power through that step fracture from this side, I'm going to come in from that side. But this side's kind of steppy too, so we'll see. I might have to remove a lot of this edge to get past these steps here. Now that, again, I shouldn't be discussing something you probably can't see, but just another step in there. Right, I'm doing step after step after step, because this is not generating enough power to power through. So I'll trim back this edge and then work this side. And this is the kind of thing I'm afraid of doing with this here, because once an island is created in something this wide, you can pretty much say goodbye to the width, because you've got to really remove a lot of it to remove that island, remove a lot of width to remove islands. And an island has steps all the way around, step fractures all the way around, so you really need to get close into that island to remove it. And usually you need to find out what step fracture is closest to the edge, and then bring the edge all the way up to that step fracture, and then power the rest of it off. That's the simplest way. If you can build a really good platform and generate a lot of power, sometimes you can swipe off an island if it's not too tall. If the step fractures are not very tall, sometimes you can power through it. But I'm at a risk of developing an island here because it's lumpy. It's very lumpy right here. So I've got to make some very good thinning strikes over that area. And with abo techniques, the main difficulty I encounter with working with abo and working with other people who want to learn it is thinning. So that's why I'm kind of discussing the thinning aspects more than anything else. Talking about islands and stuff. Alright. I don't know, I might be able to actually get some good results with a hammerstone strike. Because this flaker really can't remove a large, gigantic flake, but I can try with this. So I'm going to go ahead and try. I got a big old step here. Now, it could be the material also, but I think what's happening is there's too many step fractures existing. Because this material responds well to the hammerstone, and if I'm not getting good results, it's me, or the technique, or the area I'm trying to hit. It's just not prepared well. I'm trying different methods to turn this edge. Okay. I had to really get in there and get a precise strike to get that edge to respond. And I still don't know if I have a good hammerstone platform. I probably should have measured that width too, so I can compare the width to the final result. I got to make the platform as perfect as possible. All that preparation for a flake of this size. It went where I wanted to, but it wasn't very thick. And the platform was way below center line and very well reinforced. And the flake that came off was this size. And I hit it really hard. So, one more time. I have another platform because I created a series. I didn't really isolate that one particular spot. I kind of prepared this whole edge a little, so I blew away that area, so I'm going to move over here to this area here. I hit exactly where I wanted, but again, not enough power to it. Let's see. I got to really start getting aggressive here. Yeah, I hit that hard, really hard. It did what I wanted, but I hit it so hard that it was either the stone breaking or the antler breaking, but I took the risk. I hit it hard enough to break the antler because I've broken antler before. That shows you how hard you need to hit it sometimes, and I think you can see the bite I took out, or the amount that was blown away by that strike right here in the middle. But it worked. It didn't go all the way to that step fracture, but it did remove a lot of that lump, which opens up a better situation to run better flakes. And again, I'm going to hit this antler hard enough to break it, and it might break the tip, but I need to use that amount of force to remove these flakes. Almost reached the other side. Okay, that one did reach, and it was not too bad. I used an extreme amount of force. Okay. I'm not going to risk any more here because the edge is getting thin. I may be able to do a strike from down here with a hammerstone up toward the blade here to get rid of this mass. Again, I'm striking very hard. I did get a little bit of a flake, but I think I took more off the hammerstone than I did than the workpiece. One more time. I have a nice ridge. With this small flake, I managed to create a ridge here, so I'm going to try to run that ridge. Okay. Again, I hit that hard enough to break this, and this didn't break, luckily. I hit it hard enough to snap it in half. If it was any thinner, I think it would have snapped. But you can see how much of the edge I took away. But I needed that flake. That was really good. Because the end of that flake is the end of that step fracture. Or close to it. So now that this lump is pretty much tamed, I guess that's a good word for it. Just need a few more flakes to whittle that down. But I'm going to take a break here, just in case the camera's not running, because sometimes it won't record, or sometimes the battery wears out. Okay, so let me take a break. Okay, so everything seemed to be fine with the camera. The light's still on. It was on before, but I just wanted to check. Call it OCD or whatever. Alright, so let's see. I'm going to run some more flakes with this punch. Still very, very hard strikes, and now I'm getting better results. Because now I'm getting to run further. Because the contour is not as bumpy, it's not as drastic as before. Again, I backed off a little on the force, and guess what? I got a short termination. I backed off on the force. I didn't think I required as much. And that's what happens. Okay. So everything else now is not major. I'm not majorly concerned with the thickness anymore. Unless I make a mistake, it should thin down pretty good. I hit too far this way and blew off a lot of the corner, but I still got a good platform there. I'm trying to reduce this mass down here by sending a flake across. Not too successful with that one. I should probably just whittle this down with the punch. Instead of trying to take big flakes, I'll just whittle it down. Oops. Almost cheated with the plastic billet. Yeah, much better. Still hitting hard enough to break the tip. And it may be developing cracks or whatever, but that's just the cost of doing business. Yeah, it's doing really well as long as I'm using a tremendous amount of force. Yeah. So that's why I like this technique instead of trying to do it, you know, like on the lap. Because if I were to smack that as hard as I'm smacking it down here, I would need an extremely thick pad. And I don't work with pads. I did in the beginning, but then I've kind of lost interest. I lost interest in working with pads because, you know, just one more thing to think about. You know, sometimes it slides around, and with me anyway, it'll slide around and give me difficulty. Anyway, it's starting to get kind of dark. I'm seeing the daylight fade, so I'm going to stop this here. Anyway, let's see what I got. Excuse me. See what I got to show for the thickness to width, or the width to thickness ratio. 1.5 by it's a slightly more than 1/4 inch. Yeah. 5/16. Yeah, 5/16. 1.5 by 5/16. Yep. So let's see. If it was a 1/4 inch, that'd be 5:1. So it's between 4:1 and 5:1. And this is 6:1. So I had an easier time with a larger piece, and that's pretty common. You have an easier time thinning a larger piece than you do a smaller piece. Okay.